In this video, I'm going to update you on all the most recent and the most important information regarding the UFO disclosure process that is occurring now. There are some crucial details that many people are not aware of regarding the 2004 USS Nimitz Tic Tac UFO event. Number one, the Tic Tac UFO is called a Tic Tac because of its shape, but certainly not because of its size. The Tic Tac UFO is actually the same size as an airliner. In other words, a really big commercial plane. Another thing to consider is that Tic Tac UFO was visiting the USS Nimitz task force for 2 full weeks prior to an F-18 actually intercepting it. Another crucial detail regarding the USS Nimitz event that has not been made public yet, I heard about it from George Knapp a few days ago, but beyond him, I don't think it's ever been reported, is that the incident that happened to the USS Nimitz was only the beginning of a long series of events of this type of UFO visiting the military. It was visiting the military many times on the West Coast, but it also was visiting the military on the East Coast as well. In fact, it was reported by George Knapp that the frequency of this Tic Tac UFO buzzing the US military became so commonplace that it pushed Lou Elizondo over the edge to want to resign from the Pentagon. Because according to George Knapp, Lou Elizondo was getting extremely frustrated with the fact that the Pentagon was not taking it seriously enough, the UFO phenomenon. Now, I find that hard to believe, and I have to wonder if that might be some sort of cover story or theater, but that's not something I'm going to delve into now. Another thing I learned from George Knapp, and this was during a Phenomenon Radio episode that I will link below, but I learned more details about how these alien alloys have affected people, and it's quite disturbing. The scientists under Robert Bigelow that were studying the alien artifacts and also may have had contact with alien bodies were having awful symptoms from it. They were having trouble sleeping, they were having physical disabilities and nightmares. George Knapp also touched upon the Skinwalker Ranch that is owned by Robert Bigelow, and he said some tough customers who visited the ranch had some dramatic effects. And when he said tough customers, the thing that comes to my mind is maybe military soldiers. I'm not sure what he's referring to, but he's insinuating people that have a very strong mindset. Here's a quote by George Knapp referencing the tough customers that visited the Skinwalker Ranch and what happened to them as a result. Things they encountered there followed them and have had lasting effects on the people who were on the property as well as their families. Linda Moulton Howe responds, "All negative, George?" And then George responds, "Yeah, pretty bad stuff." Now, regarding the researchers and the tough customers that visited the Skinwalker Ranch, I don't really know exactly what phenomena they encountered, but if I had to guess, it may be a mixture of extraterrestrial, interdimensional, and maybe even something akin to poltergeist. I don't know, but it sounds like a very scary place, to be perfectly frank. And it should be noted that even the DIA has visited the Skinwalker Ranch here and there to study it. So something is definitely going on there, so much so that the US government has gotten involved. And of course, under Robert Bigelow during the UFO program at the Pentagon from 2007 to 2012, I believe they also were studying phenomena occurring at the Skinwalker Ranch as well. Regarding the stories of the scientists who were studying the alien alloys and perhaps the dead bodies, and the effects it was having on them, nightmares, not being able to sleep, even physical disabilities, the question arises, why exactly would that occur? And I have theorized that maybe one reason it has occurred is simply because the spiritual makeup of these extraterrestrials, or the psychological makeup of them, is in conflict with the human mind. In other words, it may not be that these aliens are evil, and that is why the humans that are interacting with them are having these physiological effects. It may be that this species or this race of aliens is simply energetically incompatible with human beings. And so when a scientist studies these dead bodies or studies these artifacts, somehow the energy of that species is incompatible with the frequency of the human mind, and therefore it causes all kinds of disturbances. And many have theorized that those alloys that are used in those UFO crafts, that on some level they are conscious. In fact, there's been stories that the aliens can control those UFOs through their mind. And so it could be that those alloys in some sense are an extension of the aliens, and that the aliens' consciousness sort of lives on in the alloys. So if there is some sort of toxicity to the aliens' consciousness that inevitably affects human consciousness, then even the alloys themselves, which could have some residual alien consciousness, could cause all kinds of problems for human beings. And I think this is an important distinction, because just because the alien artifacts and the alien dead bodies may have these very negative effects on human beings, it doesn't necessarily mean that the aliens are evil. They could be benign. It may just mean that the sort of spiritual and mental frequencies of this race of aliens is just at odds with the human mind and causes inadvertently disturbances within the human psyche. And I should be clear that these negative psychological and physiological effects that people are having that come in contact with these alloys and potentially dead bodies, that may only be the result of coming in contact with a certain alien species, whereas there may be many alien species where if you were to come in contact with their dead body, or if you were to come in contact with pieces of their flying saucer or whatever they're flying, there would have no negative impact upon the psyche. And I think that's an important distinction to explore. There is a bizarre story that came out yesterday where the Defense Intelligence Agency has announced that there are some confusions with the story that came out by the New York Times on December 16th regarding the UFO program led by Lou Elizondo. A spokesman for the DIA reportedly said there is some confusion about this program and claims about its purpose in press reporting. The Defense Intelligence Agency has not released any information, files, or videos. But Department of Defense officials disputed this, saying they did not know what confusion the Defense Intelligence Agency was referring to, and stating they had been clear about the program's aims. And that program the Department of Defense is referencing is, of course, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program that Lou Elizondo headed for nearly the past decade. So the question arises, why is there a discrepancy between what the DoD says and what the DIA says in reference to the program in the Pentagon? I would say the discrepancy is probably a manifestation of those within the intelligence agencies that simply do not want disclosure to occur. Remember, not everybody in the intelligence agencies want disclosure. Probably more do than don't, but those that don't really don't want disclosure. In the December 21st, 2017 Phenomenon Radio episode, George Knapp goes into detail about why some within the intelligence community does not want disclosure. It's really interesting. Roll it.
There are people inside government now who are freaking out about this, who are opposed to the release of the information, not necessarily because they worry about the public going crazy, buying guns and blowing up all social institutions. That might be a concern, but because they worry about their own culpability, about the lies that they have told, about money that's been stashed into secret programs that should have gone to something else, about the taxpayers getting outraged.
On December 28th, the CIA tweeted out something that I would consider a bit unusual. The tweet says, trying to photograph a UFO. If you click the link, it will take you to the CIA website, and then it will take you to an archive from the Freedom of Information Act. And it just shows you an old looking paper which explains how to ideally take a photograph of a UFO. I believe the reason the CIA made the tweet about UFO photography is the same reason that the CIA released 12 million pages in January of 2017. In that dump in January, much of it was UFO related. So I believe that, as well as the tweet, is to prepare the populace of the United States for greater transparency on the UFO subject, which is unraveling right now as we're going through the disclosure process. On December 29th, Jimmy Church received a message from Tom DeLonge prior to Jimmy Church hosting the Coast to Coast AM show. And the message reads as follows. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to say for all of your support, I want to thank you. And as you know, I created a vehicle that my team was able to supercharge and get the Pentagon to officially acknowledge the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. Senator Harry Reid, the former majority leader, went on the record as well. Congress has ignited, and briefings will be starting soon if all goes well. So bear with me as we start talking about more gun camera footage, hardware, and even more expansive military encounters. It's all coming, but it's going to trickle down over the months ahead. I want to thank you all again. I am one of you. I am a truth seeker. Jimmy Church read that on the air at the very beginning of the Coast to Coast AM program. And it was simply a way to update everybody on what Tom DeLonge has been up to recently. Beyond the mention of hardware, which apparently Tom DeLonge is going to reveal at a later time, the mention of Congress being ignited and that Congress will be briefed on the UFO subject is quite huge. When the Congress does start getting briefed on the UFO subject, that will create undoubtedly a media frenzy and will bring us that much closer to disclosure, capital D. Well, peeps, that's all I got for now. If you enjoyed this video, I do hope that you will subscribe. 2018 is going to be a wild ride. Happy New Year.